The story begins with a middle school boy named Kang Hyuk, who became famous for taking down 30 high school students all by himself. People started calling him Dako. 2 years later, Hyuk has dropped out of school. He goes to a base camp where he meets his two best friends Jae-wook, a boy with blonde hair, and Bon-hwan, a chubby and cheerful guy. The three of them laugh and remember the fun times when they were still in school. However, because of a serious incident, they decided to leave school. Now, they've taken on a job to earn 100,000 won. Next, we see students at Kichon High School. A group of troublemakers is planning something, and one of them, a boy named Jong-Il, looks uneasy. Jong-Il doesn't want to be part of the bad crowd. He just wants to live a simple and peaceful life as a regular high school student. Meanwhile, at another school called Dangyoung High School, a student named Tae-Jin is busy training with his wrestling team. But even in this school, there's a gang of troublemakers. One of them, Young-ha, is the second in command of the group. These gangs from both schools have teamed up to bully other students and take their money to support their own gang activities. On the school roof, Young-ha and his gang are bullying some students. Suddenly, his girlfriend, Soo-jung, shows up and starts yelling at him. She's upset because Young-ha is ignoring her and looking at another girl, Hyun Sun. Feeling jealous, Soo-jung doesn't stop there. She tells Young-ha to bully Kyu Soon, Hyun Sun's older brother. After school, two of Young-ha's gang members drag Kyu Soon to a quiet spot to beat him up. But they don't know that the place is actually Hyuk and his friend's secret hangout. When Hyuk sees what's happening, he tells them to leave. The gang members get angry and try to fight him. A big fight breaks out, but Hyuk defeats them easily. Afterward, he tells Kyu Soon to leave quickly. Feeling scared and desperate, Kyu Soon asks Hyuk for help to protect him and his sister from the bullies. To show his gratitude, Kyu Soon buys lunch for Hyuk and his friends. During lunch, Kyu Soon explains why they're being targeted. He tells them that Soo-jung is jealous of Hyun Sun because Young-ha keeps paying attention to her. Soo-jung has been bullying Hyun Sun so badly that she ended up in the hospital and is now traumatized. Since Hyun Sun is in the hospital, Soo-jung decided to target Kyu Soon next. After hearing his story, Hyuk and his friends agree to help Kyu Soon and his sister. Soon after, Hyuk decides to head home early, and turns out he has an older twin brother named Hu. Unlike Hyuk, who dropped out of school and lives as a tough guy, who is gentle, kind, and super smart. Even though they are very different, the two brothers are really close and care about each other a lot. The next day, Young-ha's gang members lie to him. They tell him they couldn't bully Kyu Soon because Kyu Soon hired 10 bodyguards to protect him. They make up the story so Young-ha won't punish them. Hearing this, Young-ha goes to Jin Hwan, a student connected to the troublemakers at Dangyoung High School, and asks for help in dealing with Kyu Soon. Meanwhile, Kyu Soon goes back to Hyuk's base camp. Seeing how scared Kyu Soon is, Bon-hwan comes up with an idea that he decides to teach Kyu Soon some self-defense moves. Not long after, a group of troublemakers is seen near the base camp, bullying Tae-Jin. Tae-Jin is a strong wrestler, but he doesn't fight back because the wrestling team has strict rules about not fighting outside the arena. Frustrated, Tae-Jin asks Hyuk and his friends for help and offers them lunch in return. Jae-wook and Bon-hwan are thrilled about the idea of free food, so they happily agree to help Tae-Jin handle the bullies. After this, Hyuk and Tae-Jin become good friends. One day, Hyuk and his friends visit Hyun Sun in the hospital. Even though Hyuk seems tough and quiet, he surprises everyone by bringing a gift for her. When they see that Hyun Sun is still scared and hasn't recovered from the bullying, Hyuk and his friends promise to protect her and Kyu Soon from the bad students. After leaving the hospital, Hyuk and his friends wait for a group of troublemakers from Kichon High who are after Kyu Soon. When the gang shows up, a big fight breaks out. At that time, Hyuk and his friends easily defeat most of them until Jong-Il steps in. Jong-Il shows his impressive martial arts skills, surprising everyone. While the others are knocked down by Jae-wook and Bon-hwan, Jong-Il keeps fighting Hyuk. Their battle is intense and evenly matched until the sound of a police siren makes the gang run away. At that moment, they don't want to get caught by the police. Later, Kang Hyuk, the leader of the Kichon High gang, gets angry when he hears that his group lost to just 3 of Kyu Soon's supposed bodyguards. He's especially mad at Jong-Il for hiding his fighting skills from the older students. But then, Jong-Il tries to explain that he doesn't want to fight anymore. He just wants to be a normal student and go to school like everyone else. Surprisingly, Kang Hyuk agrees to let him leave the gang, but only if Jong-Il promises never to fight again. If he breaks this rule, he'll have to face Kang Hyuk directly. After Jong-Il leaves, Kang Hyuk secretly plans to get him into trouble. He tells his gang to frame Jong-Il, so he ends up fighting and gets expelled from school. At the same time, Kang Hyuk reports Kyu Soon's situation to Sung Kyu, the leader of the Dang Young-Hae gang. It turns out that Sung Kyu didn't know anything about Kyu Soon. The one causing problems with Kyu Soon was Young-Ha, and it was Jin Hwan who asked Ki Chan-hai for help, not Sung Kyu. Furious that they acted without his permission, Sung Kyu calls his gang to the school rooftop. There, he slaps Soo Jung and beats up Young-Ha and Jin Hwan for embarrassing him by involving Dang Young-Hae in their issues. Even though the schools had an alliance, Sung Kyu refuses to rely on Kang Hyuk and his gang just to deal with a quiet student like Kyu Soon. After finding out that Kyu Soon had Dako protecting him, Sung Kyu calls someone named Park to handle Hyuk and his friends. Meanwhile, Kyu Soon has become close friends with Hyuk and is now treated as part of their group. At Ki-chan High, some troublemakers start bullying a classmate of Jong-Il named Dongmin. They do this to try and force Jong-Il into a fight. At first, Jong-Il ignores them and focuses on his studies, but the bullying keeps getting worse. Luckily, a teacher notices what's happening and steps in to stop it. A few days later, Hyun Sun is ready to leave the hospital because her injuries are fully healed. But as she and Kyu Soon are heading home, they are stopped by Young-Ha and Jin Hwan. The two immediately attack Kyu Soon and kidnap both siblings. At the same time, Park goes to Hyuk's base camp and takes down Jae-wook and Bon-hwan without much trouble. However, when he faces Hyuk, Park is defeated easily. After losing, Park reveals that Kyu Soon and Hyun Sun have been kidnapped by the delinquent students from Dang Young High School. At Ki-chan High, Jong-Il can't take it anymore when he sees Dongmin being bullied. Even though he promised Kang Hyuk not to fight, he steps in to protect the boy. Using only a pin, Jong-Il fights off the bullies and even takes on more troublemakers waiting for him in the school hallway. Despite being outnumbered, Jong-Il defeats them all with just his pin. Unfortunately, a teacher witnesses the fight and blames Jong-Il for causing trouble. As a result, Jong-Il is suspended indefinitely. Meanwhile, Kyu Soon and Hyun Sun are brought before Sung Kyu. In front of Hyun Sun, Sung Kyu beats Kyu Soon to scare her. It turns out Sung Kyu has feelings for Hyun Sun and forces her to accept him, threatening to hurt her brother if she doesn't. Just then, Hyuk arrives and fights off all of Sung Kyu's men by himself. Jae-wook and Bon-hwan quickly rescue Hyun Sun and Kyu Soon. But unknown to everyone, Kyu Soon has been hurt so badly that he later dies from his injuries. The next day, Hyuk decides to meet Dong-jae and asks for help to break the alliance between Dang Young-hae and Ki-chan High. He hopes this will stop the delinquent students from causing more trouble. Later, Hyuk and his friends visit Kyu Soon's house, only to discover the heartbreaking news that he has passed away. They report the incident to the police, but because they look like delinquents, the police don't take them seriously. Feeling responsible, Hyuk and his friends deliver food supplies to Hyun Sun's house to help her. However, days go by, and Hyun Sun doesn't come out of the house. She's still too scared and traumatized, and the food they brought starts piling up at her door. One day, Hyun Sun, who missed her brother deeply, thought about how happy Kyu Soon seemed when he was with Hyuk and his friends. Remembering those moments gave her the courage to step out of her house and meet Hyuk and the group. When she saw them, she thanked Hyuk and his friends for everything they had done to help her and her brother. She told them how grateful she was for their kindness and support. However, she also asked them not to take revenge for her brother's death. Hyun Sun explained that she had already accepted his passing and didn't want Hyuk or his friends to get hurt because of the dangerous alliance between the two schools. But Hyuk, still hurt and angry, couldn't just let his best friend's death be ignored. He was determined to stand up for Kyu Soon. At Dang Young High, the school committee held a meeting about Kyu Soon's death. They decided it must have been caused by an illness, as there was no solid proof linking Sung Kyu to the beating. It turns out the head of the school committee is Sung Kyu's mother, which allowed him to avoid any blame. Meanwhile, Sung-Kyu didn't feel guilty at all. Instead, he felt proud of himself for what he had done to Kyu Soon, even boasting about it to his close friends. When Hyuk and his friends decide to take down the alliance between Ki Chon-hai and Dang Young-hai, Jong-Il and Tae-Jin step in to join them. Both are fed up with the bullies at their schools who keep hurting others. Jong-Il tells Hyuk they need a solid plan, as there are more than 40 troublemakers from each school. If the two alliances combine forces, Hyuk and his group would have to face over 100 people. To even the odds, Hyuk decides to seek help from Dong-jae, a student who once tried to fight Kang-hoon and destroy the alliance but lost. Now, Dong-jae works as an informant for the alliance. Hyuk and his friends first defeat Dong-jae's guards, then explain their mission to him. When Dong-jae hears Hyuk's plan, he agrees to help. It turns out Dong-jae still holds a grudge against Kang-hoon and is eager to provide information and strategies to bring down the alliance. Meanwhile, Tae-Jin finishes his wrestling practice, but feels uneasy when a senior named Ho-rim starts following him around. There, Ho-rim openly says that he likes Tae-Jin, but Tae-Jin tries to ignore it, focusing instead on preparing for his upcoming wrestling tournament. One day, Sung-Kyu and his gang try to bother Ho-rim. Tae-Jin sees what's happening and steps in to protect Ho-rim, warning Sung-Kyu to leave Ho-rim alone. Angry that Tae-Jin stood up to him, Sung-Kyu decides to get revenge by trying to shut down the wrestling team. The next day, he confronts the wrestling team leader and purposely provokes him into an argument. One of Sung-Kyu's friends secretly records the scene, making it look like the wrestling team leader was using violence. Sung-Kyu takes the video to the principal, who, because of the school's strict rules against violence, decides to disband the wrestling team. However, the wrestling team leader begs the principal not to shut them down, especially since the team is preparing for a big tournament. Tae-Jin also apologizes to Sung-Kyu, hoping to make peace and stop any further trouble. When his plan to disband the team fails, Sung-Kyu comes up with a new scheme to get Tae-Jin expelled. He decides to kidnap Ho-rim and harm her, timing it right before Tae-Jin's wrestling tournament. On the day of the tournament, Sung-Kyu and his gang show up to watch the match. At the same time, Hyuk and his friends are also there to support Tae-Jin and keep Hyun Sun company. But because Hyun Sun is still scared of Sung-Kyu, she asks Hyuk to take her somewhere safe. As Tae-Jin gets ready to compete, Soo-jung approaches Ho-rim and tries to lure her into a trap. When Tae-Jin finds out that Ho-rim has been kidnapped, he rushes to save her, leaving his match behind. Overcome with anger, Tae-Jin takes on Sung-Kyu's gang, defeating them one by one. Even when Sung-Kyu begs for mercy, Tae-Jin keeps attacking him until Hyuk arrives to stop him. Hyuk warns Tae-Jin not to go too far and tells him to take Ho-rim to the hospital immediately. Hyuk then confronts Sung-Kyu, demanding that he apologize to Hyun Sun and her late brother for all the terrible things he did. But Sung-Kyu refuses and even threatens to bully Hyun Sun again. Furious, Hyuk knocks Sung-Kyu down, leaving him unable to fight back. Meanwhile, Jong-Il faces Kang-hoon's strongest fighter, his right-hand man from Ki Chon-hai. However, Jong-Il is defeated because the opponent figures out how he fights with his pen. After the loss, Hyuk trains Jong-Il, encouraging him to rely on his own strength instead of the pen. 2 weeks later, Tae-Jin is suspended from Dang Young-hai, and Hyun Sun moves to the United States to live with her parents. Tae-Jin is also heartbroken because Ho-rim's father blames him for what happened to her, and he can no longer see her. Feeling lost and angry, Tae-Jin starts fighting street thugs to protect innocent people in the neighborhood. One day, Tae-Jin crosses paths with Kang-hoon, who challenges him to a duel. Despite Tae-Jin's strength, Kang-hoon defeats him easily. It becomes clear why Kang-hoon is the leader of the alliance between Ki Chon-hai and Dang Young-hai cause he is incredibly powerful and hard to beat. After losing to Kang-hoon, Tae-Jin feels a strange sense of relief. He finally understands how Ho-rim must have felt when Sung-Kyu hurt her. That night, Tae-Jin, still bruised and sore, goes to Hyuk's base camp to talk about his fight with Kang-hoon. Tae-Jin and Jong-Il agree it's time to put an end to the alliance. Hyuk contacts Dong-jae to help with their plan, but they don't realize that Kang-hoon is already one step ahead. Kang-hoon forces Dong-jae to trick Hyuk by giving him the Alliance headquarters address. The next day, Hyuk asks his twin brother, Hyuk, not to fight because it's their birthday. But Hyuk is determined to follow through with the plan to break the Alliance. Soon after, Jong-Il, Jae-wook, and Bonhwan head to the headquarters to fight the Alliance members, while Hyuk prepares for a one-on-one battle with Kang Hyuk. At that time, the fight is intense. At first, Kang Hyuk doesn't take Hyuk seriously and thinks he's just another fighter. But when Hyuk tells him he's the famous Dako, Kang Hyuk finally realizes how strong Hyuk is and agrees to fight him. Meanwhile, Jong-Il and his friends struggle against the strongest fighters in the Alliance. It looks like they're about to lose, but then Tae-Jin shows up just in time to help. Together, Jong-Il and Tae-Jin defeat the toughest gang members, putting an end to the group at Kichon High. At the same time, Hyuk battles Kang Hyuk and wins, leaving Kang Hyuk unable to fight back. With Kang Hyuk defeated, Hyuk destroys the Alliance and ends the trouble caused by the gangs at Kichon High and Dangyung High. After the fight, Jong-Il and Tae-Jin are surprised to find out that Hyuk is actually the legendary Dako. They're amazed and start to respect him even more. But later that night, Hyuk gets terrible news that his twin brother, who has been badly hurt and is in critical condition, even though everyone tries to save him, who passes away a few months later. Heartbroken, Hyuk promises to fight for justice for his brother. The film ends. The moral lesson from this film is if you're bad at fighting, just make friends with someone who isn't, because sharing lunch is cheaper than paying hospital bills.